Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lin. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. The US and China agree to resume high-level military communication and work to curb fentanyl production. Biden and Xi say they make real progress in California meeting on the sidelines of the APEC summit. Israel says that weapons and operational command center belonging to Hamas found in Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital. The US president says Israeli operation will stop when Hamas no longer has the ability to do horrific things to Israel. The 10th ASEAN Defense Ministers Plus meeting is on in Jakarta. India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh is attending. Five-time champions Australia will be taking on South Africa in the second semi-final of the Cricket World Cup in Kolkata later today. The US President Joe Biden and the Chinese President Xi Jinping agreed during a summit to restart high-level military-to-military talks. DD India's correspondent Ira Spitzer has more on the summit location, from the summit location in San Francisco.
This highly anticipated meeting between the two leaders of the world's largest economies has wrapped up here on the sidelines of the APEC summit in San Francisco. Now, this meeting took place at a location about an hour's drive south of the city, and Presidents Biden and Xi spent about 4 hours together. The meeting included a working lunch followed by a walk in the gardens of this palatial estate where the meeting was being held. Now, expectations were somewhat low going in as far as at least having any major announcements on some of the big areas of disagreement between the two countries, including the U.S. and China's position on the island of Taiwan, which China claims as its own territory, as well as the conflict in Ukraine and the conflict in the Middle East. So we didn't see any major breakthroughs on those issues, although the two sides did discuss that. Where we did see some progress, perhaps the biggest outcome of the meeting was the resumption of military-to-military communications between the two countries. Those communications had essentially been cut off from the Chinese side after a series of disagreements, including the visit by then Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan last year. So essentially, at that point, there was no one that the U.S. could call in order to manage anything with the Chinese military. So that raised concerns about the competition veering into conflict, as the Biden administration likes to describe it. So that's one big outcome. And the other big outcome from the U.S. side was an agreement to work with the Chinese government to limit Chinese firms who are involved in the production of fentanyl components. Fentanyl is the powerful synthetic opioid, which has been largely responsible for the major overdose crisis here in the United States. So another potentially important agreement there. But certainly just the fact that these two countries are meeting at all, given the amount of tension in the relationship, as seen as a victory, but perhaps no major developments in some of these global conflicts where both countries play a major role. Ira Spitzer reporting for DD India at the APEC summit in San Francisco.
And addressing a press conference after that meeting, President Biden said that the two leaders, they talked about the Israel-Hamas conflict, and he said that Hamas committed war crimes by having terrorist headquarters in the hospital. Biden also stressed that the Israeli operation against Hamas is not going to stop until Hamas no longer has the ability to do horrific things to Israel.
The first war crime is being committed by Hamas by having their headquarters, their military, hidden under a hospital. And that's a fact. That's what's happened. Israel did not go in with large number of troops, did not raid, did not rush everything down. They've gone in, and they've gone in with their soldiers carrying weapons or guns. I think it's going to stop when Hamas no longer maintains the capacity to murder and abuse and just do horrific things to the Israelis.
Earlier at the meeting, Xi Jinping called the U.S.-China relationship the most important bilateral relationship in the world. He also said that Biden and he shoulder heavy responsibilities for the two peoples and for the world and for history.
The China-U.S. relationship, which is the most important bilateral relationship in the world, should be perceived and envisioned in a broad context of the accelerating global transformations unseen in a century. It should develop in a way that benefits our two peoples and fulfills our responsibility for human progress. China-U.S. relationship has never been smooth sailing over the past 50 years or more, and it always faces problems of one kind or another. Yet it has kept moving forward amid twists and turns. For two large countries like China and the United States, turning their back on each other is not an option.
The meeting between the two leaders held on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC summit in San Francisco, where the leaders have already announced a consensus on nearly all points for a final joint declaration. The ministerial meetings held on Thursday focused on combating corruption, while India's Minister of Commerce, Piyush Goyal, met with the U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo. Let's take a look at DD India correspondent from San Francisco, Simon Marks' report.
This summit was in large measure on Wednesday overshadowed by the meeting 40 minutes away from here between US President Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping. But while that was taking place in the countryside, here in the city, hard work continued in an effort to bridge differences so that this summit can lead to a muscular joint declaration. US Trade Representative Catherine Tai says consensus has been reached on nearly all paragraphs included in the declaration, but tensions were evident here again over the Israeli assault on Gaza, with representatives from Malaysia and Indonesia demanding a ceasefire. American officials say they believe it is possible differences over Gaza and other issues can be accommodated as negotiations continue. Meanwhile, India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal continues representing the country as a guest economy invited here by President Biden. He met US Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, officially launching the two countries' innovation handshake agenda. It was set in train when Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited President Biden at the White House in June. Minister Goyal called the innovation handshake a joint commitment to strengthen the startup ecosystem and promote cooperation in critical and emerging technologies. Commerce Secretary Raimondo defined it as a critical tech partnership, with further events due to take place in Silicon Valley, just to the south of us here, next year. Simon Marks for DD India at the APEC summit in San Francisco.
An update now from the Indonesian capital, Jakarta, where the 10th ASEAN Defense Ministers Plus meeting is taking place. This is discussing strengthening security and defense cooperation. That's on the agenda. And India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh was received by the Indonesian Defense Minister and the chair of the ADMM Plus, Prabowo Subianto. The Indian Defense Minister is going to address the forum on regional and international security issues. The ADMM, the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting, is the highest defense consultative and cooperative mechanism in the ASEAN. The ADMM Plus is a platform for the ASEAN member states and the 8 dialogue partners, which include India, the United States, China, Russia, as well as Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand, to communicate with each other. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar concluded a 5-day visit to the UK on Wednesday. Last on the itinerary was an interview with a journalist, Lionel Barber, during which he responded to a question on the India-Canada row. He emphasized also that Canada has not shared any evidence with India to support its allegation. Jaishankar also said that India is not ruling out an investigation, but has asked Canada to provide evidence.
If you have a reason to make such an allegation, please share the evidence with us. We are not ruling out an investigation and looking at anything which they may have to offer.
Let's now tell you all about Dr. Jaishankar's UK visit, during which he met with government as well as opposition leaders, and he also met members of the Indian diaspora, and he celebrated Diwali. Ollie Barrett reports.
It has been a packed visit to the UK for the External Affairs Minister, and it came at a time of political change as UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak carried out a cabinet reshuffle. That meant that EAM Jaishankar met with, and he remarked on this on the social media site X, the UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly on the 12th of November at a High Commissioner's reception. The very next day, he met with the new Home Secretary, James Cleverly, who had moved jobs in the reshuffle. The AAM met with the new Foreign Secretary too, the former UK Prime Minister David Cameron, now in that role. They discussed, we're told, the situation in the Middle East, the strategic partnership between India and the UK, the conflict in Ukraine, and issues related to the Indo-Pacific region. There was a meeting during the trip too with the UK Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, and on Wednesday discussions with the UK National Security Advisor Tim Barrow, as well as the Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy of the opposition Labour Party. EAM Jaishankar's visit comes as the UK and India continue negotiations on a free trade agreement. The EAM marked Diwali during his visit as well, with a call on Prime Minister Rishi Sunak at Downing Street, which was also described as an opportunity to continue reframing the relationship for contemporary times. He also met with the Indian diaspora at Neasden Temple in London and at a Diwali reception here in the British capital as well. At that event, he spoke of a new momentum in UK-India relations. Ollie Barrett in London, reporting for DD India.
And the Indian Minister for Earth Sciences, Kiren Rijiju, will be visiting the Maldives to represent India at the President's oath-taking ceremony. The Maldives is India's key maritime neighbor in the Indian Ocean region, and it occupies a special place in Prime Minister's vision of Sagar and neighborhood-first policies. Well, this high-level ministerial representation from India at the inaugural ceremony underscores India's commitment to further deepen the substantive cooperation and robust people-to-people ties between the two countries. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. The UN Security Council calls for urgent and extended humanitarian pauses in Gaza for aid. The first fuel since the start of the conflict is delivered to the UN agencies in Gaza. And British Prime Minister says that he's going to introduce an emergency legislation in Parliament to declare that Rwanda is safe.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such change makers. Watch Change Makers on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. My name is Mark Lynn. Here's an update now on the Israel-Gaza conflict. And the Israeli Defense Forces, they've said that they found a command center, weapons and combat gear belonging to the Hamas terrorists. This is in Gaza's biggest hospital. This happened on Wednesday. The military simultaneously released a video. It said that it showed some of the materials that they had recovered from this undisclosed building in the hospital compound. The IDF spokesperson, Jonathan Cornicus, is seen in the video talking about this, and he said that it shows that Hamas systematically uses hospitals in their military operations.
So we're inside the MRI center of the Shifa hospital. Israeli troops breached here a few hours ago, and we have cleared the area, make sure that it's safe. And a few of the most interesting things that we have found totally confirm, without any doubt, that Hamas systematically uses hospitals in their military operations in violation of international law. And what we have found, I think, is only the tip of the iceberg. I'll show you what our troops exposed just minutes ago. In military terms, this is a grab bag, grab and go of a Hamas combatant. And if you zoom in, and we get some light over here, what you will be able to see is military equipment. There is an AK-47, there are cartridges, ammo, there are grenades in here, of course uniform, and all of this was hidden very conveniently, secretly behind the MRI machine. On the other side, we found a backpack with what appears to be very important intelligence, including a laptop, and we'll show you that momentarily.
Well, the chief Israeli military spokesperson, the Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, at a press conference confirmed that the Israeli troops had found weapons, combat gear and technological equipment in the Al-Shifa hospital.
In the hospital, we have found weapons, intelligence, military technology and military equipment. Additionally, an operational command center and technological assets belonging to Hamas. The technology and the materials have been sent to intelligence for inspection and review.
As the Israel-Hamas conflict enters the second month, calls for humanitarian pause in Gaza Strip. These calls have intensified by world leaders. What's happening is that the UN Security Council had called for an urgent and extended humanitarian pause in the conflict between Israel and Hamas in the Palestinian enclave for a sufficient number of days to allow aid access. And the United Nations Security Council, which had gathered on Monday, they voted on the resolution drafted by Malta.
We also know that while this resolution is critical, its passage alone will not save lives. Actions on the ground will. We've worked with Israel, its neighbors, the United Nations, and other partners to get aid into the hands of vulnerable Gazans. And we have secured initial steps for critical humanitarian pauses that should be coordinated with the UN to enable hostage release, help civilians reach safe areas, increase the flow of aid, and ensure it reaches those in need.
And during the council meeting, the United States, Russia and Britain abstained from voting, while the remaining 12 members voted in favor of the Malta drafted resolution. Russia abstained because there was no call for an immediate ceasefire. Israel's allies, the US and Britain, they didn't like the resolution text, which did not mention the Hamas attack or didn't condemn the Hamas attack.
This resolution is absolutely necessary, though the UK regrets that the first resolution passed by this Council on this matter could not clearly condemn Hamas terrorist attacks of the 7th of October. The barbarity of those attacks should be clear to us all. That is why we have abstained today. But let me be absolutely clear. It was vital and overdue for the Council to speak on this crisis, and we strongly support the resolution's purpose: to get aid in and hostages out.
The first truck carrying fuel into Gaza since the conflict began crossed from Egypt on Wednesday to deliver diesel to the United Nations aid agencies. The delivery was made possible by Israel giving its approval for 24,000 litres of diesel fuel for UN aid distribution trucks and not for the use at hospitals. The UN relief agency UNRWA confirmed that just over 23,000 litres of fuel was received, and that, they say, is only 9% of what they require daily to sustain life-saving activities. The British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says that he's going to introduce emergency legislation in Parliament. This is to declare Rwanda is a safe place. And now it comes after the UK Supreme Court had ruled that this plan that he had in mind to send asylum seekers to the African nation was unlawful. Julia Chapman reports.
The British government is now trying to find a way to make the Rwanda plan workable after the unanimous verdict from 5 Supreme Court justices that in its current version, it isn't lawful. The reasons given for that is they deemed there to be too high a risk for asylum seekers to be sent back to the countries from which they fled, something that would breach the UK's obligations under a number of international agreements, including the European Convention on Human Rights. There were accusations as well about extrajudicial killings in Rwanda and accusations that the judiciary isn't independent enough from the government to judge on any kind of sensitive asylum cases. So lots of reasons why this plan shouldn't be happening, according to the court. But Rishi Sunak says there are already talks underway with Rwanda about tweaking that plan, coming up with a legally binding treaty to overcome some of those concerns from justices in the British court. But certainly that is a process that could take many months and would require parliamentary approval. And that's not a guarantee that Rishi Sunak can achieve that before he has to call the next general election. There has been accusations, criticism from the other side of the political spectrum, the opposition Labour Party, saying this has been a waste of time and taxpayers' money and the government should stop trying to make the Rwanda plan happen. But both sides agree that there is too high a level at the moment of net migration, although there are very few legal schemes allowing people to come and live in this country permanently. But what the government is trying to clamp down on is the crossings in small boats of asylum seekers across the English Channel. Last year saw record numbers of arrivals that way. This year there have been fewer people, around 32,000 so far this year, but the government is under huge pressure to deal with unofficial migration, particularly with a new election looming next year, and this being a very politically sensitive issue. Julia Chapman in London, reporting for DD India.
The upcoming elections in Madagascar are facing controversy as the opposition candidates threaten to boycott it, citing electoral irregularities. The president, Rajoelina, pushes forward amid a claim of ineligibility. Let's take a look at Daniil Medvedev's report.
Madagascar's President Andry Rajoelina is pushing ahead with elections that could see him win a second term, but it comes as opposition party members say they will boycott the elections. Rajoelina was initially slated to face 12 opposition party members, but 10 candidates, dubbed the Collective of 10, say they would not take part in the polls, claiming flaws in the electoral process. The opposition candidates have also told people to stay away from polling booths. 11 million people in Madagascar are registered to vote. The opposition has since September organized daily peaceful protests, often leading to running battles with state authorities that have resulted in serious injuries and arrests. The opposition claims that President Rajoelina is not eligible to run for presidency because he was granted French nationality in 2014, which they say legally revokes his Malagasy citizenship. Meanwhile, Rajoelina insists that he was never informed of any loss of his Malagasy nationality. The High Constitutional Court last month ordered the postponement of the elections by a week to November. Daniil Medvedev reporting for DD India.
Mexico's Popocatépetl volcano has emitted ashes and smoke causing a yellow volcanic alert. What's happening is that the volcano has experienced 15 exhalations in the last 24 hours. The yellow spotted river turtle, which typically hatches 72 days. And rains have eased flooding in Pes de Calais, which is after the local authorities downgraded the flood alert level from red to orange. Schools are reopening there, but almost 500 households are still without electricity. At least 7,000 homes have limited access to drinking water. The French President Macron declared a state of natural disaster for 214 municipalities and promised emergency funds of up to 50 million euros. According to a recent UN World Meteorological Organization report, the levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere have reached a new record high. This happened last year. Well, the report unveiled that carbon dioxide levels, they were 50% above the pre-industrial era, and thus for the first time. The WMO Secretary General, Professor Petteri Talas, has highlighted disastrous consequences of the further temperature increase, heat waves, extreme rainfall, glacier melt, sea level rise. The UN agency warned that the current temperature levels could persist for decades, even with rapid emission reductions. Measures to reduce fossil fuel consumption are essential.
We have again broken less comfortable records in main greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxide. And for example, now we have 150% more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than we had during the pre-industrial times. Climate change is not only a temperature issue, but it's wider change in our behavior of atmosphere, and we have already seen practically the whole planet has seen an increase of heat waves. About half of the planet has been facing an increase of flooding events, and 1/3 of the planet has been facing an increase of drought events. And this negative trend will continue until 2060s.
Let's take a look now at other stories making news around the world. Thousands of protesters gathered in front of Spain's socialists' headquarters after an investiture debate for the acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's new term. Sanchez's amnesty deal with Catalan separatists has sparked protests. 80,000 people in Madrid, tens of thousands in Granada and Seville. Researchers from ETH Zurich, they have 3D printed a robotic hand with synthetic bones, ligaments and tendons using Inkbit's laser scanning technology. The team used slow curing plastics, in fact. For strength, they added a laser scanner to check for bumps and uneven parts, resulting in delicate structures. A portrait of the British actress Madeleine Carroll, who is known as the first blonde, Hitchcock blonde that is set for auction next month. And the price tag is estimated to be around $60,000 to $87,000. The portrait, painted by the Hungarian artist Philip Alexescu Laszlo in 1935, was created when Carroll played her part in 39 Steps, which was one of the first plays that she was in. The painting, which was acquired by its current owner in Spain, is on display at Christie's British and European Art Sale in London. And still to come here on DD India News Hour. Torpedo Advanced Light, the first indigenous advanced lightweight anti-submarine torpedo of India, is being showcased at the Dubai Air Show. And efforts are underway to rescue the trapped tunnel workers in North Indian state of Uttarakhand. Also, a young computer engineer from the Indian state of Maharashtra has produced saffron in hot climate. We'll tell you later. You're watching DD India News Hour. My name is Mark Lynn. Here's a recap of our main stories. The US and China agreed to resume high-level military communication and work to curb fentanyl production. Biden and Xi say that they are making real progress in California. They are meeting on the sidelines of the APEC summit. Israel says that weapons and operational command center belonging to Hamas was found in Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital. The US president says that the Israeli operation is going to continue until Hamas no longer has the ability to do horrific things to Israelis. The 10th ASEAN Defense Ministers Plus meeting is on in Jakarta. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh of India is attending. And five-time champions Australia will be taking on South Africa in the second semi-final of the World Cup cricket in Kolkata. As reported by the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iran has successfully enriched uranium to a level near that required for nuclear weapons. So the nation has shown resistance to providing essential cooperation to the agency, creating challenges for global authorities. The stockpile of highly enriched uranium has increased, but the rate at which Iran is enriching this material has slowed, potentially due to negotiations with the United States. The number of uranium enriching centrifuges has remained unchanged, contributing further to escalating tensions between Iran and the international community. Despite ongoing issues with Iran and its compliance, the country is not expected to face severe consequences at the next IAEA board meeting, which is due to because of diplomatic consideration and incurred by other global issues. Amidst the whirlwind of media innovation showcased at the Global Media Congress 2023, the Media Future Lab stood out as a beacon of forward-thinking solutions. As panels delved into the realm of sports journalism, the lab demonstrated how technological advancements are reshaping a spectator's role, seamlessly transforming them into active participants in the unfolding narrative. However, in the era of rapid information dissemination, the Congress recognized the gravity of the disinformation challenge. As a pivotal platform for media professionals, the Congress fostered collaboration, encouraging the exchange of ideas and the fortification of defenses against the omnipotent threat of disinformation. And as the UAE prepares to host the COP28 later this month, our correspondent brings you this exclusive interview from the Global Media Congress in Abu Dhabi. This is on the youth's perspective about climate change. Let's listen.
UAE is going to host the COP28 later this month in November 2023. As the conversation of climate change is happening all over the world, let's listen to the voice of the youth. We have with us Mr. John Paul, who is a student in Belgium, who is also a climate and sustainability activist. Hello, Mr. John Paul. As we are gearing towards this COP28, so what are your views on climate change, and right here at the Global Media Congress, what do you expect AI to do in tackling climate change?
In climate change, adaptation and mitigation is one of the important things. And when it comes to agriculture, we have to analyze how much it's going to impact in the sector, especially drought, heat waves, and other things which should be predicted much in advance to help farmers to protect their crops and also ensure the food security of our country.
How specifically can AI help us in mitigating and adapting to climate change, especially in the realm of agriculture and...
We could foresee the future already with the climate science. And when it comes to AI, we can integrate technology to see how climate change is fall into this crisis perspective. And also when it comes to climate change, we already know one of the biggest impact is going to be in agriculture sector.
As UAE is gearing towards COP28, the message is loud and clear. Climate change has to be addressed and given the top priority, not only in media conversation, but in technology also.
Well, the Torpedo Advanced Light TAL is showcased at the DRDO India Pavilion during the Dubai Air Show. This electrically propelled self-homing torpedo is deployable from both ships and rotary wing aircraft, featuring active and passive operation modes, as well as advanced digital control and guidance systems. The TAL, it serves as a formidable anti-submarine weapon capable of engaging targets in shallow as well as deep waters.
We are showcasing this lightweight torpedo advanced lightweight. This torpedo is launched from aircrafts as well as supersonic missiles. So missiles carry this torpedo. Then the torpedo is taken to the point where the target is available. At that point, the missile drops the torpedo, and the torpedo descends into the water with the help of a parachute. Once it touches the water, then the parachute is got cut, and then it tries to home onto the target.
Moving on, while the Indo-Pacific has become geopolitically contested as a space, India's role as a security partner is gaining ground. Jessica Taneja spoke to Dr. Walter C Ladwig. Now, Dr. Ladwig is a political scientist specializing in the geopolitics of the Indo-Pacific. Here's what he said.
We have with us Dr. Walter Ladwig. He is senior lecturer at King's College London. Thank you for speaking to DD India, Dr. Ladwig. There are other initiatives which are trying to counter the Belt and Road Initiative. We've seen the one that has been forwarded by Europe as well, and of course the IMEC that is in its initial stage. There are other various initiatives to counter China, or to balance China, let's put it that way. How have those been shaping up, and what more needs to be done to, in fact, look at and how to respond to China's debt trap diplomacy?
A lot of these initiatives you discuss, whether they're the mega infrastructure corridor projects, whether they're the G7 projects, whether they're the Quad infrastructure projects, all implicitly or explicitly have the idea behind them that you can compete with China on transparency. You can compete with China on accountability. You can compete with China on quality.
Taking from the recent developments in Papua New Guinea, with vis-a-vis the Solomon Islands, and how America, along with the Indian Prime Minister present there, spoke to the other Pacific Island countries, and soon Papua New Guinea, we saw the favorable decision fall, in our favor, I would say that. How important a strategic role does India play apart from this, the bipolar world that we're stuck in? Do you see India emerge in that multipolar world as playing a key role, perhaps?
Look, India has been talked about for the last 2 decades as being a key swing state in international politics, and this is an area that gives sort of a tangible example of that. India has historical relationships, there are cultural ties and linkages with sort of key Pacific Island nations and populations, and it's able to leverage that in important ways. In this case, delivering, I think what we would see as a win or a favorable result for states that are friendly with India, and helping to sort of isolate and contain new areas of encroachment by China.
Efforts are underway on day 5 to rescue 40 workers trapped in an under-construction tunnel in the North Indian state of Uttarakhand. Now, as per the public relations officer of the Navyug company. All the trapped laborers are safe and they are being continuously talked to and communicated with. The workers are also being given medicines and food items through a pipe that has been drilled inside. Meanwhile, America auger drilling machine has completely been set up. The plan is to use this machine to drill through the rubble of the tunnel's collapsed portion and insert mild steel pipes, one after the other. Once this happens, the trapped workers on the other side of the rubble can crawl out to safety. And let's take a look now at other stories making the news. Well, the death toll has increased to 39 in the bus accident in North India's Jammu and Kashmir. The bus carrying around 56 passengers skidded off the Batote-Kishtwar National Highway into a 300-foot gorge. 17 people are still undergoing treatment. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has expressed grief over the loss of lives and announced an ex gratia of 200,000 rupees to the kin of the victims. There's no respite in sight as New Delhi's AQI, that's the Air Quality Index, it continues to be in the very poor category. In many parts of the country and many parts of the city, the AQI is above the 400 mark. And among temporary measures, the Delhi Fire Services trucks, they are sprinkling water in 13 hotspots to weigh the air pollutants down. A young girl from North India's Jammu and Kashmir has brought laurels to the nation by scaling South Africa's highest peak, Mount Kilimanjaro. The girl was warmly welcomed in her village where a large crowd had gathered to greet her. She took 3 hours and 40 minutes to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, which is located at an altitude of 19,340 feet. A young computer engineer from the state of Maharashtra in India has produced saffron in Shahadat. This is a village and it's got a hot climate there, and saffron is, it typically requires very cold climates, pretty much like Kashmir, for it to grow. But this young engineer has accepted that as a challenge and has successfully achieved the alchemy of taking the yield of saffron cultivated in Kashmir and producing a similar experiment to it in Maharashtra. But still to come here on DD India News Hour. The US stocks were up on Wednesday following the release of key inflation data. And Virat Kohli hits a record-breaking 50th ODI ton. India outbats New Zealand to storm into the Cricket World Cup final. Also, Daniil Medvedev is through to the semi-finals of the ATP Finals with a win over Alexander Zverev.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world, one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Well, the US stocks, they were up on Wednesday following the release of figures show stubborn inflation cooled off in October while consumers cut their spending last month. Sally Peterson reports.
Announced on Wednesday that the US Producer Price Index fell 0.5% in October. The PPI measures final demand costs for businesses, and it's an important gauge of inflation. That's down from a 0.4% increase in September, and it's the largest decrease since April 2020. Meanwhile, other data showed Americans cut their retail spending last month for the first time since March. Retail sales fell 0.1% in October from the month before. That's a smaller decline than economists were expecting. Investors hope Wednesday's numbers could see the Federal Reserve reduce borrowing costs at its next rate meeting in December. In corporate news, retail giant Target saw its shares soar after posting better than expected results for the third quarter. It closed the day up 18%. The Dow closed the day up 0.5%, the S&P 0.2%, and the Nasdaq was flat. Sally Patterson in New York reporting for DD India.
The India International Trade Fair in Delhi is showcasing India as a global business and investment destination for international traders. DD India correspondent Kriti Vadera reports.
India International Trade Fair has started with the theme of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, united by trade, emphasizing global unity through commerce. Young entrepreneurs across the globe see a huge scope in the Indian market for trade.
I'm glad that you guys here today, and we are glad that India is a place that we can trade our dry fruits, our thoughts, and our culture. So that's a very good idea of these people that they have bring many countries together, and they are sharing their thoughts, their structure of life, their way of how they live. So that's all come too good, and I am, especially me, actually, I am feeling too much proud to be here right now.
Feels actually really good. The expo, the exhibitions, they're really crowded. They're the best. The sellings, the marketing, the people, the attraction we get, the affection the customers show to us, to our products, it's really good.
We are coming from Turkey for mosaic lamps and ceramic. We are bringing for decoration. We are so happy for for India International Trade Fair.
I feel very pleasure to be with my dad, to be with my dad in this business, and I feel very pleasure to be in India. It's my third time that I have traveled to the India, and we have varieties types of products, like we have the Rudraksh, we have the Saligrams.
International exhibitors feel proud to be part of such huge event.
This is my first time in India, and I see the first moment we opened the shop. We haven't finished decorated, but too many people here and full of our shop, and they really love buying a lot. And we're very happy that we can offer you the very good quality products to India, and you guys like it. So I'm so impressed.
Keeping in mind the diversity of India, India appears to be the favorite destination of international traders. And this time, India International Trade appears to be really special for all the customers who are visiting it. Not just because of the 3,500 exhibition stalls here, but with the new fresh look of Pragati Maidan as well. With camera person Radhe Krishna, I'm Kriti Vadera reporting from New Delhi for DD India.
Well, the news coming in from the United States, the US Senate has averted the risk of an impending partial government shutdown on Wednesday as it passed a stopgap spending bill and sent it to President Joe Biden to sign into a law before a weekend deadline. The 87-11 vote marked the end of this year's third fiscal standoff in the U.S. Congress that saw lawmakers bring Washington to the brink of defaulting on its more than $31 trillion in debt this spring, and also twice within days of a partial shutdown that would have interrupted pay for about 4 million federal workers. The last near miss, as we recall, was on October the 3rd, and it led to the ouster of the Republican U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Kevin McCarthy that left the chamber leaderless after that for about 3 weeks. Well, you're watching DD India, and now we're getting you the sports news. And the five-time champion, Australia, they are set to take on South Africa. This is in the second semi-final of the ODI Cricket World Cup. It's going to happen at the Eden Gardens. And South Africa have never progressed beyond the semi-finals of the tournament. They've been impeded by a combination of bad luck and nerves. They've also looked formidable this time round, having trounced Australia in the league phase. But then Australia are on a winning streak. They have won 7 games in a row. And our correspondent Anil Thomas is covering the match for us and the atmosphere. Well, Anil, South Africa have won 4 games on the trot, including winning a come-from-behind series in September. They were trailing 0-2, and then they won that series 3-2. So tell us a little bit about the rivalry between these two teams.
Well, purely from a good morning, Mark. Purely from a statistical point of view, the two sides have met each other in World Cups on 7 different occasions at 7 different venues. The honours are shared, but remember the 1999 Edgbaston match, that it was a matter of nerves in the end. Lance Klusener and Alan Donald, and that big drop that Herschel Gibbs did. You know, all that playing in the minds of South Africans. Also, in 2007, the two teams met once again in St. Lucia. There too, Australia getting the better of South Africa. 2 big games that we remember. But this is the same ground that Australia first won its World Cup in 1987. And this is the very ground in 1992 post-apartheid when South Africa toured India. This is where it all began. Kolkata's Eden Gardens is where they notched their first win. So a lot of history behind it. It's a contest, Australia versus South Africa. That's going to be, a batsman's day out, I would say. If the rain gods play good, this could be a good contest for the batters. I think the bowlers don't have much purchase on the Eden Garden track, but the gloomy weather around could make it, a tricky contest for either of the captains who win the toss, deciding what to do first on that particular track.
And you did say gloomy weather, and it is looking a bit gloomy behind you, a bit cloudy there. What's the prediction? I mean, it's going to rain?
Well, ICC's got a reserve day in play, especially for World Cup matches in the semis and the final, and that's something good that could hold, or that could benefit both the teams there in the middle. There is a likelihood of, 40% rain today, and if the match gets, postponed to tomorrow, where it stops today is from where we will continue playing. So if, let's suppose Australia is batting first, Australia have played 30 overs, and if it rains, and if we don't get further action, then the reserve day will come into play. Australia will begin from playing the 31st over, and that's how the match is. But, the weather forecast for tomorrow also doesn't hold much bright news for our viewers, because the predictability of rain tomorrow is almost double of what it is today. So we could hope that, action begins. We did see similar forecast in Bangalore too, when India took on the Netherlands. But luckily the rain gods stayed away, and once all the matches in the World Cup were over in Bangalore, the rain gods have prevailed there, and we've seen good rains there. So let's hope that Kolkata too gets the benefit of the rain gods staying away for today. Good action on the field, 2 good teams that are heavy on batting, and we've seen a bit of Adam Zampa, 22 wickets. That's been overtaken by Mohammad Shami now. But Adam Zampa has been good. South Africans would be prompted, looking at the gloomy weather and the conditions here, to play 2 spinners in this particular match.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Anil Thomas, for joining us. Overcast conditions there at the Eden Gardens for the second semi-final. Earlier, India entered the final of the Cricket World Cup with a 70-run win over New Zealand in the first semi-finals. This happened in Mumbai on Wednesday, and Virat Kohlis has become the first batter in history to score 50 ODI centuries, breaking Sachin Tendulkar's record of 49 centuries. In fact, Virat Kohli held that record as well, along with Sachin Tendulkar. They both shared it at 49 centuries. And Kohli broke the long-standing record of his compatriot Sachin Tendulkar for the most ODI hundreds of all time. Daniil Medvedev became the first player through to the semi-finals of the ATP Finals by defeating Germany's Alexander Zverev on Wednesday. Zverev has won the title twice in 2018 and 2021, and this almost brought him in danger of missing out on his semi-final spot, and he'll be kicking himself after some costly errors against the Russian. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us, Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. You can have, we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. My name is Mark, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.